Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be analyzing a crazy endgame that occurred recently at the end of a game played between two top players and two of my good friends, Jackson Smiley and Josh Sokol. Now, this position is extremely complicated and both of the players were quite low on time by the time it was reached, so it's important to keep that in mind and realize that neither of the players could reasonably have been expected to process all of the complex lines that we're going to be going over in this video within the amount of time they had left. Now, it's Josh to move here. He's up 2 points, and he's got AAEIJR against Jackson's DNRRSU. And what Josh was able to realize under his time pressure was that he only has one spot left for his J, and that's to go right here, making the word Jin. And what he also realized is if he doesn't play his J immediately, then Jackson is probably just going to play Rin or Din here and stick Josh with the J. So Josh won't be able to play his J anywhere, and then Jackson can simply take his time to go out, maybe play 1 or 2 tiles at a time, and then eventually, once he does go out, he'll get the 16 extra points from Josh's J, and that should easily be enough for him to win the game. So realizing all that, Josh came to the conclusion that he needs to get rid of his J immediately, and as such, he plays it for 10 points. However, as it turns out, Josh is in a winning position going into the start of this endgame, but Jin turns it into a lost position. And we'll see why by the end of this video. So after Jin, Jackson is now in a winning position. And we'll see soon what Jackson should have done here, but he went with Erns and Phis, which on the surface makes sense, right? It keeps DR, which should be pretty flexible for the rest of this endgame, and this scores quite well and unloads a bunch of his tiles. So this looks like a really strong play, but as it turns out, Josh is once again in a winning position here. Josh played the move Use and EM, basically trying to play off 1 tile at a time and score as much as he can. However, Josh once again flips the script, turning what should be a winning position here into, again, a losing position. So yet again, here we have Jackson to move, and Jackson should be winning. However, he makes the move of Jin here, putting a D in front of Jin, which scores quite well. It scores 12 points, but yet again, it turns it into a 1 position for Josh. And this isn't it, folks. Here, Josh goes ahead and plays air through the I and Phis, scoring pretty well, but once again, handing the position over to Jackson to win. And finally, Jackson does capitalize, going out with ER, and getting the final 4 points from Josh's rack and winning by a score of 382 to 370. So this is what actually happened in the game. And just to recap, we went from what started as a winning position for Josh to a winning position for Jackson, to a winning position for Josh, to a winning position for Jackson, to a winning position for Josh, to a winning position for Jackson, and finally a 1 game for Jackson. Wow, so crazy, crazy stuff. And let's try to unpack a little bit of that. So let's go back to the most recent flip of the script, so to speak, which was just on Josh's last turn. So here Josh played air, but Josh can actually win this game here. And the reason is Jackson has an R, but the problem for Jackson is he only has 1 place to play it on this board, and that's right here under the second E in Pothenes. So what Josh can do is play his own R in that spot for 2 points, and Jackson now has nowhere he can play his R to make a valid word. So his only move is to pass. Josh now plays Via from this V for 6. Jackson has to pass again. And finally, Josh could go out with Can and AI for 7, winning by a single point after getting the 2 points from Jackson's R. So crazy stuff here. Normally you don't see players getting stuck with an R. It's usually a pretty easy tile to play in the endgame, but this is a very closed board, and weird things can happen sometimes on very closed boards, and in this case, Jackson could have gotten R stuck. So this is why Josh needed to play ER in this position instead of air. So we now understand why Josh was winning here, but let's go back another turn. If Jin wasn't right for Jackson, which looks really good, right? It scores 12 points, unloads his D, then what should he have played? Well, you might be able to guess that he needed to foresee that he was about to get R stuck and play off his R immediately with ER. And the catch here is Josh actually cannot block Jin, because there's nothing he can play in front of Jin or to any of these other words that's going to block Jackson from going out. So the best Josh could do is now to play air, and then Jackson could simply go out with Jin and win by a score of 382 to 370, which is exactly what happened in the game. So this is what Jackson should have done when he played Jin. He should have played ER instead. And if we go back one more turn, when Josh played EM, it's now probably pretty clear what Josh's mistake was in this position. And you guessed it, he should have played ER here. So in this case, we'd see the same exact sequence, basically, just in a different move order. If Josh had correctly played ER here, then Jackson is now without a spot to play his R. And as such, he would have played Jin here for 12. And now, only now, does Josh go ahead with the sequence he played in the game of playing use, followed by a pass, followed by via, and finally, after another pass, going out with can. So it's basically all the same sequence, just the move order was very important. And Josh needed to play ER immediately after Earns to guarantee the win and take away Jackson's only spot. But Jackson gave Josh another chance to take away the spot, which Josh did not capitalize on. So that basically explains the latter half of this endgame, which is actually the least complicated part, as crazy as that sounds. So now let's, we have two more plays to look at. We have to look at Earns by Jackson and Jin by Josh. And Earns, let's look at first. So again, this looks like a really strong play, right? It scores 25, which is an amazing score for a board this tight, and it keeps his D and his R. But as we saw, it runs into the problem of getting R stuck. So what Jackson needed to do here was actually sort of paradoxically not cash in on this setup here with his S, but actually look more towards using this spot with Jin that Josh just set up for him. Because again, as I mentioned in one of the other variations, Josh is unable to use or block Jackson from playing Jin or playing a word across, such as erd or nerd, making Jin. So what Jackson can actually do here, and there's several ways for him to win. I won't go through all of them, but the best one and the most clever is by playing the word erst here for 7 points, which accomplishes two things. Number one, it gets rid of one of his two R's in that spot where Josh was able to stick him before. So Jackson now no longer has to worry about the possibility of getting R stuck. And number two, he saves nerd, N-U-R-D, and Jin over here, which Josh now cannot block. And Jackson is still down, but the problem for Josh is he can't block this out, and he can't score enough either to overcome it. So his best play would be something like car over here, and then Jackson can simply go out, and he would win pretty comfortably by 13 by a score of 371 to 358. So in this position, Earns was a mistake for Jackson because of the R stick, and what he needed to do was ensure that he didn't get R stuck and also leave himself an out in this spot above Jin for the next turn. So we've gotten through almost all of the plays, but the one we have left is the most complicated by far, and that's this opening play of Jin by Josh. So we've now unpeeled enough layers to understand why Jin loses, namely Jackson should not have cashed in on the bottom left, but should have played erst and set up an unblockable out with Jin hooking the D. So what on earth can Josh do? Because as we mentioned earlier in the video, if Josh doesn't play his J in that spot, then can't Jackson just stick him with the J? Well, yes and no. It's true that if Josh doesn't use that spot, Jackson will simply play Din or Rin and J stick him and win the game very easily. However, what Josh can do is use that spot, but in such a way as to set up his J in even a better spot near there. And the way for him to do this is actually to play Rain for 4 points. And what's the idea with this play? Well, as you can see, he's now threatening to play either Jar or a Jar next turn for 26 or 27 points. which would be a much stronger play than simply Jin for 10. And he also isn't giving back the possibility of plays hooking a D onto the front of Jin to Jackson. But the natural reaction would be like, okay, that's great, but can't Jackson just block it? And the answer is yes, he can. He only actually has one possible word to this R that stops Josh from playing jar or a jar, and that's to play dur right here. But the problem is, after dur, Josh can simply just play aji above ID here, and that's going to score more than enough points. Jackson's best play in this position would just be sun and ajis, which will lose very easily after Josh just goes out. So after rain, Jackson cannot play dur here. We now see pretty easily why that loses. So in this case, Jackson has to allow Josh to play jar or a jar. And he might do something like he did in the game, such as earns. And here's the catch. In this case, Josh actually cannot play a jar, because what happens here is Jackson can actually play AR for 2 points, and Josh will be eye stuck. Just going out with Rad will not win. That'll lose by 2 for Jackson. Josh will win 372 to 370. But what Jackson has to do is play AR for 2. And now Josh is eye stuck. And now, finally, Jackson goes out with his D for 6 and wins by 2. So Jackson has to take advantage of the fact that Josh is eye stuck and go out in 2 instead of going out in 1. So this is what Jackson should do to try to bait Josh into playing a jar. However, what Josh can do in this position, he actually has 2 options that win. One of them is to play the word jar. This is his inferior option, actually, in this case. And now the problem for Jackson is he can't go out, and he can't stop Josh from going out with a jar and AI next turn, because he can't do anything through this J. So Jackson's best play would be, again, something like OD, and Josh goes out with AI, wins easily. However, Josh has a very sneaky play here to even garner more spread. And what he can do here is play AR for 2. And Jackson literally cannot stop Aji for 52 points next turn, because DA doesn't stop it. It actually just gives Josh more points since AD is valid. So Jackson here literally can't do anything. He just has to play OD and sit there and watch as Josh goes out with Aji for 52 and wins by 31. So crazy stuff. So we know that Jackson can't play earns after rain, and he can't play dur to this R because that just gives Josh Aji, which will score more than enough. So the question is there anything else Jackson can do? And as we see here, if we ask Championship Player, the answer really is no. Champ is saying that dur is actually Jackson's best play for spread, and Uni is apparently a little bit better. The idea with this is that at least Josh now can't play AR here, because Jackson could still block it with something like Erd. So Josh can't play AR, but he could easily still just win by playing Jar. And once again, Jackson cannot block AI and a jar, so his best play is going to be Erds, and Josh will just go out and win. So we conclude that after rain, there is nothing Jackson can do here. Once again, his only block of dur loses to Aji, and there's no way he can stop Josh from playing the sequence jar followed by a jar and AI. So really, really crazy. And Josh's path to victory is sort of a 3-turn setup, as bizarre as that sounds. He's basically, rain is a setup for jar, which is in turn a setup for AI. So really, really bizarre stuff. And yeah, this is actually Josh's only winning play in this position, as crazy as that sounds. So once again, can't at all fault him for not seeing that, given he only had about a minute and change on the clock at this point. But yeah, this just goes to show you these endgames on closed boards can be extremely rich and complex, and they just allow you to do some really crazy things like these multiple turn plans that can't be blocked that you would never be able to do on an open board. So it gets really interesting and deep very quickly. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and that's the story of how we had this crazy endgame that flipped back and forth from one player to another player having the winning position. I believe 6 turns in a row. So absolutely insane stuff. But I do hope that you guys enjoyed that and that it was instructive. I'd like to thank Jackson and Josh for posting this game and giving both me the opportunity to make a video out of it, as well as the opportunity, hopefully, for other viewers to learn from this really interesting position. I highly encourage you to check out the whole game, which I'll link to. Jackson has some really good annotations. There was plenty of other interesting turns I could have also probably made a video on, but this one definitely took the cake in terms of its complexity. So yeah, there you have it. Thanks guys for watching. Definitely feel free to suggest any other games, of course, like this that you'd like me to analyze, or if you have any other thoughts on this position, then feel free to share in the comment section. So that's all I have for this one, guys. See you later, and thanks again for watching. Bye bye.